What's going on, FA Nation? He's John Impemba. I'm Justin Fensterman, and you're looking at the DFS NBA live stream team for FantasyAlarm.com. Going to preview the playbook 9-game slate. John Impemba, how you doing? You ready to dominate?
Yeah, man, I'm ready to go. It's an interesting 9-game slate. There's a lot of injury news for my Boston Celtics. They're pretty much starting the backup squad outside of Tatum and Smart tonight, so there's going to be a lot of value there. We have some really great matchups as well, and also a lot of teams on back-to-backs. There's 6 teams on a back-to-back tonight, Justin, so it'll be interesting to see if that messes with any of the rotations.
But he could play a factor. The big injury that we're still looking out for, John, will keep you all informed, is Aaron Gordon. Still questionable, big impact player. So we'll have to see, John, because if he's out, you know who it's time for once again, the sauce. Terrence Ross becomes so much more valuable in this lineup.
Yeah, we actually literally a second ago, we actually just got an update that he is available to play. So he's available to play, Aaron Gordon, and we're still waiting on Mitchell Robinson news. He's still currently a game time decision.
At least there's not a lot of crazy injury news as we've had over the last few days. So we're going to preview position by position as we do every single live stream, and we'll tell you which players are in the Fantasy Alarm DFS NBA playbook. So, John, let's start with the point guard position here because it's the return of Damian Lillard. How do you feel about players returning, especially from groin injuries, and paying $10K like you would have to on DraftKings tonight?
I mean, it really depends. It's funny because we talk about this a lot, guys who miss time. We expect them to be limited. We expect them to be rusty. But then there are cases where, like, Norman Powell missed a month, came back and has played, 40 minutes a night for Toronto and had a lot of success. So it's kind of touch and go with certain players. I would not want to pay the $10K. But if you find out that Lillard isn't going to be limited, I mean, it's against Washington. It's an absolute smash spot. The problem is it's a 10 o'clock start, so we're probably not going to know until after roster lock on FanDuel for sure. DraftKings, if you want to throw him in your lineup and have a pivot option, maybe you keep Lillard in your guard spot, and then if you find out he's going to be limited at all, you just switch to McCollum because I think that's just going to boost McCollum up a little bit more. That's fine. Largely, though, I'm probably on fade here with Lillard.
So are you willing to spend up for, and this is Adam Ronis's playbook today, Luka Doncic, who is at the top of his playbook? You know what you're paying for this guy, John. So what do you think of Luka?
I mean, we're talking about a pace-up spot. We're talking about a game with a 240 total. Pelicans don't play any defense. Luka, is averaging 28 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists against them in 3 games this year. It's just a smash spot, and that ownership number is very difficult to ignore. Right now, we're projecting him to be the highest owned play of the slate, pretty much. 65% ownership on FanDuel is insane for a guy at his price point. But again, we're talking about depth, we're talking about matchup, and it doesn't surprise me too much, so that's where people are spending up tonight.
We'll continue going over point guards in just a second, but James Grande sent me a message, John, in all caps. Shocker, right?
Yeah.
Mitchell Robinson is officially out for this game for the New York Knicks. So we'll have to break down. I mean, we might as well just talk about it right now. So center options and big men, they have plenty of them in New York. I mean, does that mean when it comes to Julius Randle, that's a definite plug and play? Or are you going to take a risk on a guy like Taj Gibson? I can't do that.
No, I think Bobby Portis is the guy. If you're going to go in any direction, that's the direction you'd probably go. Taj will still start. Randle will still start. But now you're going to give a guy like Portis more run off the bench. It's not a great matchup, really, for them in terms of front court play. Like, they still have to go up against Rudy Gobert in Utah, so,
Rudy Gobert is not that good defensively, though.
No, but the Knicks are – but he's better than what the Knicks are going to put out there at center. He's better than Taj. He's better than Bobby Portis. So, he has to Gobert against, one of the top centers in the West that he's battling up against every single night, it seems like. Sure, he hasn't been as good, but against the East where there aren't really any centers, and especially the Knicks with no Robinson – no, that's fine. I think Gobert is fine. Portis is probably the value play. And I know Grande is watching. You let him know that, don't worry, I got the news too. I'm getting the updates just like he is. So
that's what we are. We're a family, John. Teamwork makes the dream work, and that's why the entire NBA team works as a cohesive unit.
Sure.
And we win rings for everybody. That's what we do. Let's go back to point guard though and talk about Lonzo Ball. His price point's very interesting. I mean, he's still been able to produce, even with the Pelicans close to full strength, at least with their impact players all being in. Now tonight, 7,400 on FanDuel, 7,500 on DraftKings, going up against Dallas. More than a beatable matchup for him. Is that price point too high for you, or are you willing to spend on him?
So, I mean, it's not too high. I think it's fair. And he's actually even exceeded value the last 3 games if he was going to be priced at that spot. He was cheaper to these last 3 games, so he's a better value. But we're talking back-to-back 50 fantasy point outputs for Lonzo. He's a guy that has triple-double upside. It's just, a couple slates ago, he was like $1,000 less than Elf Payton. I couldn't really figure out why, because to me, they're sort of a similar skill set in terms of like they can both score double digits, rebound, and give you assists. Now they're sort of both priced accurately, in my opinion. So the ownership is appealing to me because we're not expecting a lot of ownership on him. So if you're going to game sack in 240 total again here, Justin, that's pretty high. And the way Lonzo's playing right now, it's a good exposure at a low owner.
Remember with the Pelicans, even though it's a lot of games lately, it's still J.J. Redick is out. So with that, Lonzo Ball's minutes are a bit safer because of the Redick injury. It allows guys like Josh Hart to not impede on him as much. Same with Drew Holiday as well. So it definitely leaves more breathing room for Lonzo Ball. Let's talk about a little revenge narrative. We were just talking about this before we popped on the live stream, John. Malcolm Brogdon. Yeah, I mean, how can you not love this price point? I mean, Victor Oladipo is out. You gotta love it, man. Under $7K on FanDuel, sign me up.
Yeah, under $7K, and he's been good against them this year, going in up against his former team, averaging over 30 fantasy points a game against them. For me, I usually consider him to be, a solid cash game play. The double-digit point spread on the road, obviously, probably lessens my cash appeal to him. He's probably more of a GPP only play for me, but I mean, we're talking about a guy the last 3 games, 38, 36, and 43 fantasy points. Now, again, no Oladipo, like there hasn't been for most of this year, where, some more of that usage is going to fall on his shoulders. So I don't hate him. I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. You have 2 playoff teams. Indiana's, has been strong this year. So if they can keep it competitive, then Brogdon's going to hit value. If, Milwaukee, like they've been all season, is a beast tonight at home and they blow them out, well, you're probably going to not get pay off the price tag. So I like him in GPPs for that sake.
So who would you rather go with then? Because similarly priced is Ja Morant going up against Brooklyn, and we all know how bad the Nets perimeter defense is. So you'd be paying more on DraftKings for Ja Morant, but you'd be getting a small discount of $200 on FanDuel. So how do we attack it between the two, between Brogdon and
I really don't love Ja on the road. This is a narrative that's been developing now for us for a couple of slates. Sean Mitchell was one that really kind of hammered it home for us a couple of playbooks ago. That if you look at his road splits this year, he's averaging almost 10 less fantasy points a game on the road. Now, against Atlanta, he got off to a really good start, 27 fantasy points in 24 minutes. They got to a blowout, so he didn't play much more than that. Brooklyn, like you said, terrible defensively against opposing guards. We saw Marcus Smart light them up last night. We saw Ja Morant go for 50 fantasy points against them earlier this year. So it's certainly a matchup that you can take advantage of, but he is definitely only a GPP option for me. He would probably only make game stacks. I don't think if I'm making a lineup that isn't a Memphis-Brooklyn game stack, would I include him in there. I just feel like his floor on the road, like we've seen this year, he's given us 20 fantasy points, almost multiple games in a row. So it's hard for me to pay that number for him outside of a game stack.
From one rookie to another, Kobe White is also in Ronas's playbook. Going up against Minnesota, it's a great matchup for him. And he's been, I don't want to say the backbone because that's been more Zach LaVine, but he's starting to turn into a nice secondary option in Chicago. When Markkanen eventually returns and is at full strength, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up on the scoring food chain in Chicago. But Kobe White is over $6K too much for you, John.
No, he's not too much for me. And I mean, Markkanen is expected to return tonight, but he's going to be limited. They're getting healthier. Otto Porter came back. But the one thing I liked, and I'm kind of happy they did, is even with LaVine out the other night, they still kept Kobe White on the bench. They kept him in the role that he's been thriving in all season long, and especially recently when they've been so decimated by injury. So if they're going to keep White in his typical role off the bench while still playing, that 30 minutes as a six-man, we've been making so much money attacking Minnesota. Like last night, Everybody in New Orleans lit them up. Chicago, I think, is going to do the same thing tonight. Kobe White, for me, is in a really great spot.
Any other value that you like at point guard tonight that you've been seeing on the slate?
So, I mean, it's the conversation that needs to be had because of how depleted the Celtics are, and it's one that's been of high debate between myself, Grande, and Sean Mitchell tonight, is what to do with Brad Wanamaker. He's $3,500 on DraftKings, which is dirt cheap. He played 29 minutes last night against Brooklyn, 18 fantasy points in those 29 minutes. So it's not like he lit the world on fire, but we've seen him go for 30. We've seen him go for, upper 20s fantasy production when he's been called upon to do so. I think he starts tonight. There's no Kemba Walker. There's no Jaylen Brown. There's no Gordon Hayward. They're so depleted that he is like the third scoring option for them in that unit. And Cleveland is allowing the most fantasy points to guards this season. So Brad Wanamaker as a mid-price play, a $3,500 play, I think he plays 30 minutes tonight for Boston. So I think he's a guy that if you're looking for value, I think ownership could even be there for him.
Definitely a safe floor. Also, we put in there Collin Sexton. It's more of a 2, but Collin Sexton as well. He's been a scoring machine. Now, the price point, especially on FanDuel, is still very, very good.
Yeah.
Now, with Collin Sexton, the one thing I sometimes worry about is we're too reliant on his scoring.
Yeah.
And he doesn't help out in enough categories. But going up against this injured Celtics squad, I like him a whole lot better without Jaylen Brown shadowing him.
Yeah, no Jaylen Brown, and because Darius Garland is out, like he's going to be the point guard. So the thing we have to really like about this is the shots that he's taking. You said he's very point scoring forward, which is true. Like he needs to score to really give us the fantasy points. But in 3 of the last 4 games, 28, 31, and 32 actual points. So he's giving you what you're looking for. So when he only gives you 3 assists, 2 rebounds, and a steal, he's paying off the price. So $6,600 over on DraftKings. What we have his FanDuel or FanDuel price at? Was he like 55 or was it that?
57.
57. Okay, so I still think you can go there. You wonder if Smart's going to be the guy that's going to end up defending him. Like, sure, that could certainly be a bother. But we also saw
a really good idea.
Right.
That only just makes sense.
It does. So the only other problem is Kevin Porter is going to start at shooting guard. So maybe they want Smart's size to defend Porter because Wanamaker is not going to be able to defend a guy as lengthy as Porter, where Smart can at least. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I like Sexton. He's fine.
Let's move on to shooting guard here because we have a little bit of a strategy to talk about, John. We could pay over $10K for Bradley Beal, who has the eternal green light to shoot as much as he wants. Mm-hmm. Or we save a little bit of money and go with the number 1 option on the Brooklyn Nets, Caris LeVert. Donovan Mitchell's in Ronas's playbook as well. We'll talk about him. But when you're at the point, John, where we see Beal, who's pretty much a sure thing anyway, but LeVert, he's starting to become very Beal-like with his scoring.
It's pace-up spot. It's a high-scoring game. If there was only one thing that worried me was all the shots they took last night. And it's on a back-to-back. They have to travel a little bit. It was only Boston and Brooklyn, but they still traveled a little bit. Is he going to be worn out? I mean, the guy scored like 34 points in the fourth quarter in overtime alone. He's a great play. His price tag on FanDuel is still criminal. It's only $6,000. Like, what are we doing here? So, I mean, for that point, fine. The ownership's going to be there. The matchup's great. I just have a little bit of weariness on the back-to-back with the number of shots that he had to take last night.
Now, I'm not saying, by the way, for all of you out there, I'm not saying, hey, fade Beal, because Portland sucks at defending guards.
Yeah.
So Beal is going to destroy, but still the high price point when there's another option, man, that $4,000 plus could be very beneficial in other options.
For sure.
Donovan Mitchell's right there too. Big price difference on FanDuel and DraftKings. He's 7-3 on FanDuel, 8-1 on DraftKings. So with Mitchell, here's the thing with Mitchell. It depends on what they're going to do with Mike Conley. But here's the thing. All of a sudden, John, you could tell me if I'm crazy, and I'm not saying he's going to get shut down, but Elfrid Payton and RJ Barrett have been closing down the perimeter a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So does that worry you about Donovan Mitchell at the 8,100 price point?
So, I mean, 8,100 certainly a conversation has to be had given the way his recent play. I like him a lot more at 73 on FanDuel. I think he's actually like a really good play over there at that price. And it's not so much that like Elf Payton is good as he and that defense has been a little bit since they've come back from the break and gotten a healthy Barrett. But it's also like we saw the other night where Westbrook and Harden were going off. They benched Payton. They put Frankie Natalina in there. He's the defender. He's the really good perimeter defender there for you. One of the reasons they probably won that game against Houston was they played him 30 minutes to defend Westbrook or Harden. So if Donovan Mitchell ends up going on this run where he can't be stopped, they could take Payton out. They could put Frankie Smokes out there, play defense, and maybe that ends up shutting them down. So Mitchell, I'm probably not paying 81, but I would pay 73 for him on FanDuel.
Let's talk about some middle tier priced options for shooting guard. Marcus Smart.
Lock and load.
Yeah, so many guys out there. Both sites lock and load on him. What about Malik Beasley, though? Coming off another strong scoring game and going up against this sad Bulls team. Yeah. Is this another one that you'll lock and load? 5,300 on FanDuel? That's criminal.
Yeah, it's a joke price tag. It's the back-to-back. So maybe that'll keep some of the ownership lower on him. But it's him and it's D'Angelo Russell as the two primary scorers there. And as you mentioned, it's a good matchup against Chicago. Ever since Chris Dunn, went down, they really lost any sort of defensive identity there in Chicago. Dunn was really their lockdown guy. They don't have much else there. There's no Levine. So, I think Beasley is still going to be in a really strong spot. And again, you're right. That price tag is very difficult to ignore. And again, we're looking at a low ownership because we're seeing Chalk Levert, we're seeing Chalk Marcus Smart at the shooting guard spot. So there's not really much room for anybody else.
Well, if let's say you do want to spend up, and I have to give Ronas a little bit of an applause. I give him enough crap on Alarm After Hours on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, weeknights, midnight Eastern. But we're looking at the Detroit guards. No Derrick Rose, no Bruce Brown. So who else is there? We were just talking about this. You've got Langston Galloway, who's there. You've got Svi Mykhailiuk.
Is that how you say his last name? I've always wondered how to pronounce that last name.
Yes. I mean, I've worked on it. I'm 95% sure it's that.
Mykhailiuk, I'll run with it. It sounds right.
So he's so cheap. They need to put somebody out there, and he's pretty familiar with this offense, so he could be in line to produce tonight.
I agree with you 100%. We're definitely waiting still on Brandon Knight, whether or not he's active or not, because that's going to really swing that front court because they have nobody. They did sign Jordan McRae today, and they said he's available to play. Who knows how many minutes that's going to end up being? But, I mean, he wasn't a guy.
Here's what you do. We don't care about the season. We traded Drum. We don't care anyway. Just go out there and shoot. Maybe you don't know any of the plays, but just go out there and shoot.
So that's my only worry is the fact that they actually did bring in somebody to at least add depth. Now, again, whether he just sits on the bench and does nothing, or Jordan McRae was good for Washington, and they didn't get any minutes over in Denver, so they let him go. Maybe he comes in there just like, all right, Jordan, go play 30 tonight. Go play, basketball like you would outside, like you said. So Svi's fine. Bruce Brown, like you said, is out. So Galloway and those two guys could start. But just knowing that they have McRae there and available to play has me a bit worried.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you whatsoever. So let's move on to small forward and talk about a player that we generally don't worry about, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, at this point, going up against Indiana, does this team, I mean, they don't worry you at all with Giannis, right? Is he going to be your big pay-up for the night?
He's my top spend-up tonight. I mean, Indiana has really struggled defending opposing front courts this year. We've done really well at attacking power forward center with them. I'm going to go ahead and just give him a pass against Miami. Miami's been very good at home this year. They're in Miami. Sometimes road teams, especially when you're in Milwaukee half the year. Now you go down to South Beach. You probably went out to the club the night before. You probably had a little fun. So I'll give Giannis the pass and say he probably had a good night out in Miami, and that's the reason for the struggles. But now he's coming back home against a Pacers team that is averaging 60 fantasy points against, 22, 16, 7, a block and a half, a steal and a half per game. So for me, Giannis is my top spender.
If there's anyone that knows about partying at South Beach, it's John Impemba.
I'll be there on Saturday. I'll be in Miami on Saturday. So
there you go. Go visit John Impemba at JImpemba777. Buy this guy a beer, managing editor of FantasyAlarm.com, and has to deal with me every day, every other day, bothering him. So buy him a beer on me. Let's talk about other small forward options. We mentioned Kevin Porter. I don't think we have to spend any more time on that. Even with
very chalky tonight. Great price tag.
Right. Even when Darius Garland's healthy, this guy still leads the second unit. He's going to get a lot of shots the rest of the way, building blocks towards the future. He's one of them. So let's just move.
Seasonal pickup if you don't have him already.
Oh, if he's available, that's insulting. He should not be available right now. Right. Just saying. Other options that Ronis has in his playbook tonight. Here's one that Grande is going to love. Denzel Valentine. Mm-hmm. The price tag's very, very cheap. It's Minnesota.
It's cheap. It's a great matchup. I guess my one worry was that he only played 21 minutes last night.
Right.
So, that's my problem if he's only playing 20 minutes, they got, guys back. Porter's expected to play a little bit more. Carter's expected to play a little bit more. They're getting Markkanen back. So I wonder, if that cuts into Valentine at all.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Again, Bulls will always be dealing with injuries. That's just been the theme for them for the season. Juan Hernan Gomez, though, on the other side of that matchup, why is he still this cheap?
I don't know.
Why is he 4,900 on FanDuel? Everyone that's watching this, stop what you're doing and just put this guy in your FanDuel lineups. 4,900? Yeah. What else does he have to prove?
I don't mean to speak ill of FanDuel, but their pricing, I think they've already turned the page to baseball, and they're just letting FanDuel pricing be what it is. Because there's a lot of guys that have been mispriced them for a while now. Hernan Gomez is certainly a guy for that. They're starting Naz Reid at center. He's been blowing up. Hernan Gomez has been there. James Johnson sort of took a back seat to them now. Chicago
have room, John. I'm telling you, both of them have room to produce in this offense. Yeah. This team is strapped when it comes to depth. Both of them be able to get enough playing time to get a true rotation commitment. And with that situation in particular, and especially with Towns out of the way, right. It just really, they need somebody to score down low. Both of these guys are in play.
Very much, especially against Chicago. They're allowing some of the most fantasy points as power forward centers all year. So
let's move on to power forward. Talk about Kristaps Porzingis going up against the Pelicans. It's a different Porzingis, though, when Doncic is in, though, John. That's the difference. We spend $9K on this guy?
So earlier this year, I would have agreed with you on that. If you look at his recent game logs, though, when Porzingis has been on the floor, they finally have figured it out, I think. Whether they're playing some sort of pick and roll game with one another or pick and pop game, rather, because, Porzingis is settling for those outside shots.
Oh, I hate that so much.
The numbers have been there for him, though, lately. He's been going over 50 fantasy points while playing with Luka Doncic lately. Now, again, earlier this year, you couldn't play Porzingis at all with Luka on the floor, but he's starting to get more comfortable. Maybe we are a little bit too harsh on him as a guy coming back from major knee injury, and expected him to come back and be the guy we saw in New York right away. But he's there now. He's in elite play. I have no problem paying $9K for him. And again, this is a matchup, against New Orleans where I expect him to have success in.
John, someone on this team has to cut to the basket because they've got Dorian Finney-Smith shooting threes. They got Maxi Kleber shooting threes. Willie Cauley-Stein has been out with personal issues. They need someone to attack the rim a little bit more, and I've seen it a little bit more with Porzingis. Doesn't matter if Doncic is on or off the floor. I know he loves his threes, his deep threes, but they need someone attacking the rim. He's taken
28 threes over his last 2 games. So,
dude, come on, man. Be a big man. They need you.
So Carlisle got criticized for this, and by the reporters being like, why is Porzingis shooting what it is? And he just went back to the stats. It's all about the game now is all about 3 points. They'd rather him shoot 15 threes than take, 15 twos. You figure he's going to get more points hitting the threes than he would the other way. So they talked about it. They asked him about it. They like him going and shooting the threes. I'm just grateful that the rebounds are still there for a guy that's playing away from the basket. Because at times, like Brook Lopez is allergic to rebounding despite being 7 feet tall. He's away from the basket. He doesn't get the opportunities. We're still getting back-to-back 3 straight double-digit rebounding games out of Porzingis.
Jason Tatum didn't play last night. He was sick. He didn't play last night because
it was his birthday. Yeah,
it was his birthday, and he was out partying probably.
Yep.
So now he walks into tonight with a really high price point, but with hardly half a roster of impact players.
He's going to take 45 shots, I think. Between him and Marcus Smart, a little bit of hyperbole there, but with those guys off the floor this year, Brown, Hayward, and Kemba Walker, he has a 40% usage rate averaging 1.45 fantasy points per minute. And this isn't a small sample size because this is the rotation the Celtics use, where Tatum is sort of the, we talk about the lack of bench that the Celtics have. Well, Tatum's their bench because when they sub off the starters, they leave Tatum on the floor with the bench unit, and he's the primary scorer. So we have a large sample size of minutes here with Tatum without Hayward, Walker, Brown, and he has dominated. So I think you have to play Tatum today in GBPs for sure. I don't believe the illness was a real illness. I think he was just hungover. Happy 22nd birthday, Jason. Go into Cleveland, get us a win to make up for that awful Brooklyn loss last night.
Yeah, I might bet on it too, so win me my money back.
Player props, Jason Tatum points over.
Ooh, love that. Love that. There we go, talking wagering at DFS with all of you. A few more power forwards to talk about. Christian Wood. You talk about, again, the lack of depth in Detroit. When he's on the floor, I mean, I know the price point's at 7.7, 7.8. You still got to pay for this guy. I mean, who's going to stop him in the post?
I mean, that's what it is. And again, they don't have anybody else to score, really. They're playing their bench. It's Christian Wood. They started John Henson next to him. The only thing, and even the blowout scenarios are not keeping him off the floor. So Wood's fine. We need to just get news. The Celtics starting lineup. They're starting Grant Williams, who is also a power forward. He's okay. He's nothing special. Play Tatum.
What do you think about Daniel Theis at his price point?
I think Theis is good because they're not using Drummond or Tristan Thompson tonight. They're starting Kevin Love. They're starting Larry Nance, and they don't really have – Zizic off the bench isn't going to really give him much problem. So with everybody off the floor again, with all the guys that they're missing in that lineup, I think Theis is actually going to be an interesting play here. He usually gets subbed out when all those guys are off the floor, so he doesn't have a ton of rotational minutes with sort of the healthy group of Celtics. But, the way he's been playing lately, rebounding, scoring, and blocking shots – on FanDuel, he's kind of interesting if you're looking to spend down at that spot.
And you can clearly tell they don't like Enes Kanter compared to Daniel Theis.
They don't play him. Tonight would be a night where they could get Kanter some minutes because they're so depleted. I said Robert Williams, Time Lord, played 10 minutes last night. He could be a guy to get a little bit of a bump. I was surprised and I guess a little disappointed they didn't start Romeo Langford. But I think he's going to have to play off the bench because they have nobody else.
Yeah, the Celtics, again, dealing with a lot of injuries. There's your GPP value team right there. And also Minnesota going up against Chicago. Mentioned James Johnson, Naz Reid as well. Let's move on to the final position, the center position. You've got in Ronas's playbook here, Hassan Whiteside at 9,500 on both sites. And then there's Nikola Vucevic, who is $1,000 cheaper, John.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking? That Whiteside can dominate Washington easily. But still, do you spend up for him with Vooch at that price point?
So, I would probably rather go Whiteside of the two if I'm picking because it is Washington, high game total. He's going to block a bunch of shots there. He's going to have that upside. I don't find myself spending up at center on FanDuel tonight. On DraftKings, I think I'd probably play like Larry Nance, who is written up top of the playbook. Yep. He's starting tonight. He gets center eligible. Again, Celtics have so depleted that this is going to be a spot where he can thrive in. I put Jonas Valanciunas in the starting five, which will be released once we're off this live stream. He's my FanDuel center tonight. Ownership is right there with me on it. Against Brooklyn this year, he has absolutely dominated them. I kind of laughed when I saw the production that he had against them. In 19 minutes, Justin, in that first game, he put up 45 fantasy points. The man absolutely dominated Brooklyn. We've been going up against them with centers all season. So FanDuel, I'm playing Jonas Valanciunas. DraftKings, there's so many guys with center eligibility. I'd probably either look at Love or Nance.
You're right. I'd still go Valanciunas on DraftKings as well. Just if it ain't broken, don't fix it. They don't have
Randy Knight is active, by the way, just to update you guys on that Pistons situation. So Knight definitely becomes a GPP play because they have no other guards.
No, they're really out of options. It's pretty sad. Rudy Gobert is also written up in Ronas's playbook as well. Rudy Gobert, it hasn't been coming as easy when it comes to the double-doubles lately for him.
Yeah.
But he's going up against the Knicks. No Mitchell Robinson.
Right. He should have a field day against Bobby Portis or Taj Gibson, whoever's there.
I wish he was, being that we haven't been getting the double-doubles, I wish that DraftKings priced him down a little bit, but ownership is low, and this should be a matchup that he thrives in. But again, when I see Valanciunas right there as well, I'm going to go with Jonas Valanciunas.
Yeah, Gobert's a good pivot. He's just missing these double-doubles. He has 9 rebounds in 4 straight games, basically. So he's almost there, but I'm with you. I'd rather, if I'm going in that direction, you can play Valanciunas, add $200 less on DraftKings rather, and take the discount there.
And that is your DFS NBA live stream here on fantasyalarm.com. Follow John Impemba, our managing editor, at jimpemba777. Follow me at FenceD Sports, and make sure you catch Adam Rodas and myself on Alarm After Hours on Sirius 210 XM 87, midnight to 2 a.m. Eastern. Going to be talking to Stephon Marbury tonight. One of your Celtics, John Impemba. Starberry, baby. It's Starberry shoes.
Hey, former Nick, Yeah,
we don't like to talk about that too much. Justin Fensterman, John Impemba, the DFS NBA live stream. Good luck, and let's always dominate. Why? Because there is no other option. Let's win.